Even Jamie Dimon says JP Morgan is hoarding cash because very good chance inflation is here to stay. Well, hello there, my friends. Chris Marcus here with you for Arcadia Economics to cover some breaking inflation news because none other than Jamie Dimon of Kingpin US Bank JP Morgan is concerned that the inflation might not be as transitory as Ben Bernanke Powell has asserted. Go figure that. But we will dig in and cover this breaking news, which I can't even imagine what their analysts will say about the silver market on the back of that. But before we start, I'd like to mention that this video is brought to you by Defiance Silver Core. Now, just a quick note, we see here Defiance is a Mexico-based, that's right, a lot of silver in Mexico, just saying. But they also have gold, silver, gold, copper, and polymetallic exploration and development, actively engaged in 2 major projects. The company has a high-grade silver deposit and a large development asset with exploration upside and additional resource potential. And you might be saying, why would anybody want to invest in a silver company of all things in this current environment? And why don't we hit our main story and we'll return to that. Perhaps this will answer it, because here you see even Jamie Dimon says JP Morgan is hoarding cash because very good a chance inflation is here to stay. Now, I don't know what could have led to this revelation. Perhaps he looked at the Fed's balance sheet and saw a hyperinflationary trend there, but let's dig in. Because JP Morgan has been effectively stockpiling cash rather than using it to buy treasuries. I mean, they could actually just lend it out to their customers, but let's leave that aside. Because rather than using it to buy treasuries or other investments, because of the possibility higher inflation will force the Federal Reserve to boost interest rates, Dimon said Monday during a conference. Now that's interesting, because if higher inflation is going to force the Fed to boost interest rates, yet the stock market collapses when the Fed boosts interest rates, one could say that leaves the Federal Reserve in quite a corner, which it seems like Jamie is noticing. Now here he says, we have a lot of cash and capability and we're going to be very patient because I think you have a very good chance inflation will be more than transitory, which would directly refute everything that Janet Yellen and Ben Bernanke Powell have been saying. Although, just a question that pops to my mind, you know how one-track focused I can be sometimes. But if he's concerned about inflation, which means erosion of the dollar, well, I wonder what his brokers might advise on the possibility of buying silver, physical silver, or mining stocks like Defiance Silver, because if he's concerned about inflation, which means printing cash, which means the cash is going to lose its value, at least according to basic supply and demand laws, which I know are often suspended in today's markets for decades, even at a time in some cases. Now, obviously, JP Morgan did come out with that sell call on the silver right in the midst of the greatest buying spree in history, and the price mysteriously fell 10% on February 2nd. It didn't seem like this article covered that, but let's dig through the highlights. Because in this environment where he's asserting that the inflation might not be transitory, which means that there's going to be a lot of money printing, he's advocating cash, the exact asset that's being printed. So I'm not sure if this is good advice to follow. He waded into the ongoing debate on whether higher inflation is the result of temporary aspects of the reopening, like raw material shortages or supply chain issues, which are probably completely unrelated to silver, or if it could be something more lasting, because the Fed officials have called the current spike in inflation transitory, which means temporary and short-lived, because they're increasing voices, including Deutsche Bank economists and hedge fund billionaires, who are warning of the consequences should the Fed continue to ignore inflation, which they've really done for the better part of the last 100 years, and now is going vertical based on their balance sheet once again. But according to Morgan Stanley's James Gorman, when does the Fed move? It has to move at some point, and I think the bias is more likely earlier than what the current dots suggest, rather than later. Well, I will be sitting here waiting And JP Morgan's move to accumulate cash accounts for about half of the decrease in the anticipated net interest income this year. I mean, it seems like even banks don't like getting negative yields on their treasury investments. Go figure that. In a wide-ranging discussion, Dimon struck on several familiar themes. He warned that banks were under threat from fintech and big players, including PayPal. I will look forward to seeing if he dug into the threat of good, honest citizens who are also concerned about the inflation and bought silver in increasing amounts, which has left the JP Morgan member LBMA to issue that bizarre report confirming they were weeks away from running out back in February. But Fandy Sheckman said when silver got clobbered a couple of weeks ago, the phones were ringing off the hook, and it wasn't just him. I wonder how all that stacks up in this inflationary environment that they are warning about. But anyway, you can go look it up for yourself, see what the man had to say. And again, I don't know if that answers why anybody would want to be invested in a silver company that has a high grade silver deposit and large development asset that helps bring you information. I mean, they sponsor the show, and then they actually show their faces on the show, answer the questions, and make themselves available. Because while it's not always so easy to get in touch with Jamie Dimon of JP Morgan, if you have questions for Defiance Silver, you can call 604-343-4677 or email info@defiancesilver.com. Get you the information you need so you can find out whether you should be holding on to cash in this hyperinflationary environment that Jamie Dimon of JP Morgan himself describes, or whether you'd like to have your financial advisor, for example, call and find out more about Defiance Silver. But just to help, here's the last call with Defiance Silver coming your way now.